Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode number 21. Weekly thoughts, iPhone OS 4.0. This podcast is supported by the iPhone application It's On My Way, available in the App Store for $2.99. Grab it today to help support this show. And with that app, you'll be able to plan out your routes quickly and efficiently, planning out multiple stops along the way, something that you can't do with Google Maps right now, that you'll be able to do with this app called It's On My Way. Once again, it's in the App Store today for $2.99. Well, welcome, and this is the iPad Possibilities Podcast. I'm Tim, and I'm your host of this show, and I bring to you today a pretty exciting episode. Today, as many people know, Apple announced their plans for the next generation operating system for the iPhone. And I should say iPhone, because they are starting to separate out the iPhone and the iPad with this next release. That is something that I didn't think they'd be doing as much, but evidently they are. So I'll be talking about my thoughts with the iPhone OS before they announced it and comparing it with what actually happened. As many people have listened to the previous show, I did a pre-announcement episode on what I thought might happen with 4.0. So I'm going to go through and just kind of compare our thoughts. Now, the first thought I had was multitasking. It has to be in this next generation operating system, and I was right with that. They are doing multitasking, and the way they're doing it is they're giving developers different APIs they can use to work into their applications. So, for instance, audio can play in the background. Voice over IP applications can work in the background, and it works exactly like your regular phone does on your iPhone. When you get a call, it'll say slide to answer, and if you're working on the device, you'll have that prompt, and when you leave Skype, for instance, and go out, you'll have that bar at the top in which you're able to touch to return to the call. So voice over IP is in there as well. Location-based services for turn-by-turn directions and social networks are included. There's also push notification, which was already there, as well as local notifications, so you don't have to work with the server. You can do that all locally on your phone for notifications. There's task completion APIs. So say you're working with Evernote and you need to finish downloading that sync that can stay open and finish downloading all your content that you need while you're multitasking with that app. And there's also fast app switching. So you're able to quickly switch between applications by double-clicking on the home screen button. And there's also a way to kill the applications by just wiggling them around and hitting the delete button, basically. So multitasking is in there. They're doing it in a way which will save your battery life, that will save your processor power, and they're doing it in a very Apple way, and a way that I very much approve of, and I'm looking forward to trying that on the iPad. Now, the next feature I thought would be in there are dashboard for iPhone apps on the iPad, and that was not announced since they didn't announce anything for the iPad at this event. Another thing they did not announce that I thought might be in there is more network access. Access to printers, scanners, hard drives, shared iTunes library, and screen sharing. That was not in there. Perhaps with the iPad 4.0 they may announce this. More powerful applications was next on my list, and they did announce this. It wasn't the shared file system I would have hoped for, but they're giving developers about 1,500 new APIs and things such as Quick Look and other tools that have been on the Mac for years that they're bringing down to the iPhone developing platform. So more powerful applications are in there in a big way. Now, a redesigned home screen. Now, this didn't happen so much, but we do have folders, so I'll talk about that in a little bit here. Display output more powerful is something I thought would be in there. That was not in there. There was no mention about that. The seventh thing I thought would be in the next generation operating system was more Bluetooth support and more add-on support, universal dock to USB cable. So that was sort of in there. We now have access to Bluetooth keyboards just as the iPad has. It was not a big surprise there. I'm wondering if the iPad dock would work with the keyboard. So I'd like to get my hands on the dock to test that out myself. And that was it for pretty much Bluetooth support. I'm not sure if they added anything else to play around with it on my iPhone as I have the beta installed. And I'll play around with that and see what it's like. And so there were not much more as far as add-ons, as far as USB support through the dock connector. So I wonder if that's something they may announce for iPad OS 4.0. And then a couple of other things I thought would be in there were ability to run iPhone apps in the Mac dashboard. That was not in there, as was not the iPad apps on the Mac. The Apple Ink technology inside the OS was not in there as well. That may come about with iPad 4.0. A new lock screen that did not appear. And my last thought about OS 4.0 before they announced everything was better app management. And they did answer this question with folders. They're doing folders in an incredible way. And the way they're doing it is as you drag around your apps, reorganize them. You actually drag one on top of the other. And you can name the folder whatever you want to name it. It'll try to smart name it for you based on the category of that application in the App Store. And it'll try to do that in a very good way. And I've been playing around this on the beta on my iPhone 3G, and it's been working really well. I'm still in the process of syncing down all my applications, so I've not really tested this out in the fullest manner, but only with the built-in applications. So I am on the developer program. I can't talk about everything since a lot of that is under NDA. But better app management is definitely there, and they're doing it in a really sleek way. You can have over 2,000 applications available really easily now on your iPhone and in the future on your iPad. You're actually able to drag and drop those folders in your dock, so your dock can contain a bunch of apps instantly accessible. And that's going to be huge. I'm going to love having all my input devices on one folder so I can just pull up all my audio recorders, all my video recorders, and things like that. And it's going to be huge. All your games can just go in one folder, and it's going to clean everything out in a big, big way. So I'm very excited about folders. Now on to what actually happened with the iPhone OS 4.0. As I said earlier, multitasking is there. Awesome, great, wonderful way of executing this. Folders are there, as I said earlier. Now, a couple of things I didn't think of, I didn't note, I didn't have in my mind they would do this. And they're smaller things, I believe, but they may end up being bigger things. First, mail. We finally have a unified inbox, and threading is there, finally. As a Gmail user, threading is huge, and this finally gets rid of the need to run a Gmail application on the iPhone or iPad. Now, one quick hint for you Gmail users out there on the iPad. I've been struggling with this issue for a while as I've used the iPhone and Mac, is how you archive mail within the built-in clients on the Apple devices. And as I thought through how archiving works, I found a very good solution. To archive on the iPad built-in mail client, all you have to do is simply edit and move all of your documents you want to archive into the all mail folder. That does the same exact action as an archive would. So if you want to begin to archive and use Gmail on the built-in client of the iPad, you can do that now. It's something that's been around forever. I just didn't realize how to do it. So that is a revelation I had today, and I hope this helps you as you begin to use the mail client on the iPad. And I'm actually switching over entirely to that built-in client, and I'm going to be doing that on the iPhone as well. In the past, I've been using Gmail web pages to do this, and they do have a great Gmail interface, but I think I'll end up using the built-in client now as I figured out how to archive messages. And it'll be great to see threading come with the 4.0 update here. Now, what else did Apple add that I did not think of? Well, they also added iBooks to the iPhone, which makes perfect logical sense. Now, iBooks is not a part of the firmware as of yet, I don't believe. It's something you'll need to download, just like the iPad, I believe. It's not been confirmed or finalized, but right now there is, for the beta users, there isn't the iBooks app on there yet to test out, which is unfortunate. With Enterprise is the next big thing that I didn't think of. What they did, Apple, they divide their event into the 7 pillars of their big announcement. There's over 1,500 or over 100 features that they added to the operating system, but these are the 7 big ones. And the next one is Enterprise. So now you can do encryption within the app itself, which is a huge deal for Enterprise usage of the iPhone. You can also wirelessly distribute applications, so you don't have to just USB sync your custom apps in the Enterprise to your devices. You can do that all via wireless now, which is really cool. I'm not sure how they implement this, but it will work really well, I'm sure. You can now have multiple Exchange servers. So say you want to use the Gmail Exchange server at the same time as your corporation, you can now do that. And they've also added SSL and VPN support for Cisco and Juniper. So that's a little bit what they're doing with Enterprise. I did not think of these before. Now, one really cool thing is they're launching a game center. Now, this is an application on the iPhone that allows you to connect with your friends and things like that. It's sort of like an Xbox Live done mobile for the iPhone. And it's really... it will really be interesting to see what happens with this whole platform as Apple tries to go after the gaming market. There's Plus out there now and OpenFint, and I'm sure those might go away soon because of this. And the final announcement was iAd. So Apple's built into the developer program a way to do advertisements. And they're doing this in a really slick way. You don't have to leave the application to access the ads. It's done within the app, and you're able to play videos, play games for the ad. And it's really sleek. I'd recommend watching the video and just seeing how it all works. So that is iPhone OS 4.0. Now the the interesting thing is they are separating out the development of the iPad OS and the iPhone OS. They're not doing it at the same time, which leads me to believe that the iPad OS 4.0, which ships out in the fall, will contain a myriad of different features such as file sharing, more interaction between the apps, printer support, and a bunch of other things that they're not doing with the iPhone into the iPad. It is interesting that they're separating those out. So it is my assumption that they will be doing a big overhaul for 4.0 with the iPad that they're not doing with the iPhone. So they're separating those out. They're kind of creating a division there. And it'll be really interesting come fall what they will announce with the iPad operating system. My thoughts here on this are that they're going to do the iPhone development and get that finished up, and they're shipping that this summer. And right after that, they'll start giving developers the beta of the iPad OS and shipping that in the fall. So that makes perfect sense how they're doing that. And I was kind of disappointed they're not doing it at the same time. But I think by waiting those extra couple months, we'll get some really special, amazing things for the iPad 4.0. So we'll have more to talk about later in the summer as Apple announces what they're doing with the iPad version. But for now, we're at 3.2, and they might do 3.3 and some updates in between. And I'm really enjoying 3.2, but I will love 4.0 whenever they announce that, and I'm sure we'll have a bunch of new features, including multitasking and folders, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch of other things that we had not even thought of. So those are my thoughts regarding the 4.0 announcements today, and kind of comparing my thoughts and what actually happened. If you go to the show notes page, it's on the possibilitiesnetwork.com. If you go to the iPad, it will be the fourth item listed there. And you can pull those up. It's all done through an Evernote notebook. I'll try to keep those more updated than I have in the past. Now, some other hints and tricks I had. The first one, as I said earlier, was to archive Gmail, just move to the All Mail folder. But the second trick I had and discovered when using the Bluetooth keyboard with the iPad is a bunch of the built-in Apple Mac OS X keyboard shortcuts work for different graphical inputs. So the first way I discovered this was if you hit the Apple Shift K command, what that will do is that will give you, actually it's the Option Shift K. So if you're typing out a message and you want to put in the Apple symbol, the symbol for an apple, you hit Option Shift K, and that'll give you that Apple symbol. I've not started to play around with other keyboard shortcuts, but if you go on the Mac operating system and check out all those shortcuts, you'll find a bunch of different keyboard shortcuts to insert graphics as you're typing. So that was really cool. It does show you how deep and far this operating system goes and links up with the Mac version of the operating system. So that is actually pretty cool. And I hope that helps a lot of people as they use their iPads and Twitter with them to try to cut down on their characters. I did have a couple of extra things I want to let everyone know about. First off, there are going to be some pretty great interviews coming up in the very near future. I have no announcements as of yet, but be on the lookout for some of the high-end, for some of the great iPad developers that will be on this show doing interviews and talking about their different applications and their approach to the iPad. So we'll have a couple of different interviews already are getting lined up that are some pretty exciting interviews, and I'll keep you posted on the details as they come up. But I just want to share with you that there will be some pretty exciting episodes coming up with iPad developers. And if you're an iPad developer and would like to be on the show, just send me an email, iPadPossibilities@gmail.com, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate you and bring you on the show to talk about your applications and the possibilities and potential you see with the iPad. So this kind of wraps up this episode, this weekly thought episode on the OS 4.0. And as I said before, it is interesting to separate out the iPhone and the iPad. So as always, please send your feedback to iPadPossibilities@gmail.com and send in your voice comments to 209-542-iPad. That's 209-542-4723. And I'd love to play some of those messages back on the show and share those with all the other listeners out here. And if you want to support the show, you can do that in one of many ways. First off, simply subscribe in iTunes. Secondly, leave a review in iTunes. Every review counts. Every review matters and helps bring the visibility of this show in iTunes up and lets other listeners and other people in iTunes just helps them be more aware about what the show's all about and why you enjoy this show. And if you'd like to monetarily support the show, you can do that in a couple of different ways. First off, you can purchase the iPad Possibilities podcast app found in the App Store for $2.99. And what that app will give you is early access to all the shows. You'll get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday instead of the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday release that everyone else gets the shows at. So you'll get the shows early, and in the future, you'll actually get some extra bonus content that is not available anywhere else. So the iPad Possibilities podcast app, $2.99 in the App Store. And if you'd like to donate to this show, you can do that on the PossibilityNetwork.com. Just go to the iPad page, scroll down, and go to Help Tim Buy an iPad. And that link will give you some PayPal donation options to help me buy applications and accessories to help you bring you the latest coverage of the iPad and some different possibilities and potential with it. And if you go to PossibilityNetwork.com, you'll also find more information about this show and other shows. That is where the show notes are held, and it is a part of an entire network of shows based on possibilities and potential. So we've got a couple of different daily shows. Most of them are non-techie shows, but some very good shows there. I recommend checking them out at PossibilityNetwork.com. So until Sunday night for the live show, if you join us, we'll be meeting this Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Just go to thepossibilitiesnetwork.com, go to the live page of the iPad show, and you'll be able to call in and be in the chat room and interact with us as we discuss our thoughts with the iPad. We'll have all three members of the roundtable so far, myself, John, and Ryan on the show, discussing our first week with the iPad and some other thoughts. I'm still figuring out exactly what the live show will be this week, but join us this Sunday night. And if not, until next week, this is Tim Chatton of the iPad Possibilities Podcast.